I feel like I always preface my videos with this statement, but no matter how many times I repeat it, the statement in question doesn't get any less true. If there's one genre that's followed this channel and all of its viewers for the longest of minutes, it's probably the horror genre. People love to get scared, whether it be in the real world or in the realm of cyberspace. It's one of the most profitable genres there is due to the fact that you can yeet a couple of pennies into something completely and utterly mundane, and get a big barrel of cash thrown right back at you with the added bonus of lots of people clamoring over your project that you spent 3 whole minutes on. If I wanted to make lots of cash right this instant, I'd have a dating sim created where you have to win my approval through making good artwork, and as the game goes on, some of the art pieces I show you start getting a mind of their own, and things become very sinister extremely quickly. Sound familiar? Well, that's probably the dreaded Mandela effect kicking in, because nothing like that's ever been created and I'm the first, and I'm destined to make a lot of money through licensed merchandise of said game. I'll see you on the Forbes Billionaires Before 21 list. Where was I? Oh, yeah. On this channel, I've talked about many horror games and standard games from large franchises and franchises that are minuscule in comparison, but I feel like I haven't delved into a subgenre of horror games that a lot of people are probably familiar with and have most likely forgotten in the age of PT and its many clones. It's a genre that many a developer tried to crack, but they were oh so unsuccessful. It's a genre that gave the middle finger to the old heads at Nintendo and Sega, and mainly Nintendo, but despite this, it was the perfect mix between nostalgia and horror. The genre in question goes by the name of Creepypasta games. Creepypastas, you probably know what they are if you're recently subscribed or have been on the internet for longer than 2 seconds, but for those of you coming in to watch my content for the first time, in brief, a creepypasta can be boiled down to images or stories reposted around the World Wide Web, most of them being in the horror genre, hence the term creepy. The original definition of creepypastas were just short, user-generated horror stories that were copied and Ctrl-V'd across the internet. Nowadays, the term is used to describe all horror form content that's posted onto the internet. The length of a creepypasta can range from a single paragraph or even 2 sentences to a 34-part epic that spans across many different media types. You could start with a simple text file, and by the end of the story, you've invented a brand new console specifically for the story that can only run the corrupted file that you've created from scratch on Scratch as a batch file. With all this being said, you'd probably be bored to death over the constant saturation of updates to a story that you know probably isn't going anywhere and will probably end in the biggest anticlimax since the Game of Thrones season finale. Don't you worry, because creepypastas cover a wide variety of topics including ghosts, zombies, murder, haunted television shows, and video games. The majority of extremely popular creepypastas of the early 2010s were mainly based on new video games, urban legends surrounding video games, or already existing ones having something wrong with them. And in this video, I'm probably going to snatch away your rose-tinted glasses because some of them weren't as amazing as you might think. But before we get into the meat of video game creepypastas, as I've done in all of my videos, it's time to delve into the world of creepypasta games and maybe jog your memories at the older urban legends that you might have found scary when you were a toddler. As I've said, it's very difficult to pinpoint the exact origins of creepypasta in its current state, since the whole concept of creepypasta was to write the story anonymously and repost it on multiple websites like a game of whack-a-mole. The internet police constantly shoot down websites that contain multiple urban legends in order to stop them from spreading, but when they manage to snipe one, 4 more appear in its place, and now they have a couple of 100,000 different websites to deal with, all hosting the same urban legend, and now no one knows the origin of the story. In terms of video game creepypasta, it's argued that Polybius was the first urban legend to climb the ranks of creepypasta. On February the 6th, 2000, an entry for Polybius was added to coinop.org, a website that's used as a resource to archive and document arcade games amongst other things. On the entry itself, it claims that the game was released in 1981 and had a very limited release, with many strange stories emerging about how kids who played the game got amnesia afterwards and couldn't remember their own name. Yes, that's right, the game was that bad that people were losing their memories so they can forget the game ever existed. Speaking of things that didn't exist, the copyright date for Polybius was listed as 1981. However, if you look at the United States Copyright Office database, you'll find that there's no such thing. Is that false advertising? Did they just pull a Fallout 76 before Fallout 76? Moving on, the person who wrote this entry also claims to be in possession of a ROM image of the game, and data mined it to find text including 1981 Sinner's Lurchen. The information provided also described how guys in black coats would come to collect records from the machines, like some weird Men in Black operation where the people involved have to collect information on how the game is played and nothing else. In terms of the game itself, it was described as proving popular to the point of addiction, as if it's Pokemon Go in 2016. People were scrapping next to the machines for an opportunity to play the game first, and lines were stretching all the way down to the next state. While these people played Polybius, they suffered from a series of side effects including amnesia, insomnia, night terrors, and hallucinations. Sound familiar? The game turned out to be a bit too much for the general public, as just 1 month after its alleged release in 1981, Polybius disappeared without a trace. Buildings that still had Polybius installed in the arcade machines ended up being sold for billions so people could still play the game. Just as long as they didn't wait, what are you doing? Don't delete it! The legend of Polybius is one of the first gaming-related creepypastas to emerge on the internet, and I've covered the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to this urban legend in particular. If you want a more elaborate look into the game with some extra analysis, watch Ahoy's video covering the game. It's over an hour long and there'll be a link in the top right corner if you want to go and see it for more information into this creepypasta slash urban legend. Now, Polybius may be the first gaming-related urban legend to start doing numbers on the internet, but it most certainly isn't the last, as you're about to find out. The 2000s were extremely quiet when it came to gaming-related creepypastas, as the whole phenomenon didn't take shape until around 2011. Around that time, you had creepypastas like Jeff the Game Ender, or if you want to call him by his real name, Jeffrey Woods, starting to gain traction several years after its initial creation, as more people were getting involved with horror content on the internet. A friend just sent you a link to a download site that hosts a picture called an.jpg. I wonder what image is gonna greet me when I click on that link. It's probably another one of those Rickroll links that he keeps sending to me at school, and now, oh heavens, my eyes gone. On July 7th, 2011, a man called Cosby Duff, who was a frequent user to a site dedicated to horror named Leech, posted one chapter, the first chapter of his creepypasta story to the site. Creepypasta was pretty simple, covered a guy called Zachary who received a bunch of NES cartridges from a mate. There was no such thing as CEX in this universe, so you couldn't get money for handing in your old and busted PS2s with the disc still inside, but it's not a disc, it's a piece of cardboard with the game written on it in permanent marker, and it's Dark Cloud, but no, it isn't Dark Cloud, it's the PlayStation 2 demo disc with Airblade built in. So without the real CEX, your friends became the CEX, and that's exactly what happened in this creepypasta. Zachary loaded up the Godzilla Monster of Monsters game, and he notices that there are a number of strange kaiju that he doesn't remember seeing when he was a kid. He didn't remember all of this happening. Where did all of this come from? As he continues to play the game, what was thought to be simple glitches turned out to be gateways to entirely new content for the game, with new monsters showing up. It's after this that an evil supernatural being known as Red makes himself known, and as the story continues to develop, it turns out that Red might be closer to Zack than he'd ever realize. The creepypasta is actually pretty damn creepy to start with unsettling sprite art and the narrative being extremely interesting to start with, making you wonder what exactly is behind all of these glitches that the main character is going through. The problem is the story goes on, and on, and on, and on, and on. I get it! The longer the story drags out, the less scary the story actually became. By the end of it, you're kind of wishing for things to be over, and it does wrap up in a way, it's just that the way is extremely convoluted and stupid. Am I going to tell you this ending? No! Read it for yourself. It's a good couple of days of your time, and a couple of days never really hurt anyone. Now, why am I telling you all of this? It's because NES Godzilla gave rise to many other creepypastas covering corrupted games, and all of them had the same damn cliches that we all love to clown nowadays. There's always a creepypasta to buck the trend, so I've compiled the biggest ones in a list of what I like to call the founding fathers of creepypasta. Yeah, I know I could have thought of a better name, but it's the best I can manage, get mad. So we have Godzilla NES as one of the founding fathers, but another one I failed to mention is Ben! The story began on September 7th, 2010, and it originated on the paranormal board on 4chan. Again, story's pretty simple. Anon, or not because he actually used his name on 4chan, ghastly proposition, I know, gets his hands on a cartridge. What? Another haunted cartridge? Really? Whoa, wow, well I never. And after going to his dorm room to play the cartridge, he noticed that the old man who had the game previously never removed all of the save files from the game. You know, like you're supposed to do when you give a used product to someone else. But I digress, at this point they're boomers, but this man was an uber boomer. Anyway, he noticed that the game kept referring to him as Ben in various moments on a completely new save file, so he deleted Ben But this didn't help. After performing a day 4 glitch, he noticed that not only was he yeeted over to the Majora boss battle at the end of the game, but the text was now all jumbled up and the music that was being played was a song of healing. But reverse! He got teleported back to Clocktown, but without CS Source, because a lot of the textures were missing, the music was distorted, and the town was empty of the normal characters. Now there's the setup for the creepypasta, but you should start to get what I mean. Ben Drown served as another one of the founding fathers of creepypasta games, also giving rise to a stupid amount of cliches that are synonymous with the genre today. Some of them including the creator or seller of the base game going completely insane, and the story ending with said creator going to the house, killing the person playing the game, or doing something worse, like getting them expelled from school or grounded. Oh no! On that same note, another major cliche associated with creepypasta games is the tried and tested notion that the person selling the game is doing it at a yard sale and is begging people to buy it at a low price. We can't forget the tried and tested cliche of cartridges getting found in the trash with names written onto them in Sharpie, and when you put it inside the console of your choice, the game plays, but it's a children's pixel game with hyper-realistic ray-traced blood and gore just everywhere. Even the dialogue boxes are covered, but it can't be. I'm playing this on a GameCube and the game is making noises louder than the speakers can even manage. How is this even possible? A common theme with these kind of creepypastas is the notion that the game knows exactly who you are and where you live without you putting your details in. See, the thing is, this is now probably extremely common because every game asks you for the first 16 digits of your credit card number and your ID. That cliche is absolutely synonymous with .exe creepypastas and their associated games where the person would find a file online or randomly on their desktop after doing absolutely nothing. Or maybe some moderator from an old Minecraft forum sent you a new bucket update or something. The point is, the file in question is not what it's cracked up to be, and the creation of this creepypasta would send waves across the general horror community for all the wrong reasons. Sonic.exe is an infamous creepypasta created by JC the Hyena and is another one of the founding fathers of creepypasta games, being submitted on August the 9th, 2011. The story itself was inspired by a screenshot of the original Sonic the Hedgehog 1991 game for the Sega Genesis, where the water has blood, Sonic's eyes are bleeding and inverted, and the watermark at the bottom right of the game's title screen reads Sega 666. Woo! Scary. In the story itself, the teenager who goes by the name of Tom starts to encounter a series of paranormal entities while playing a ROM hack of Sonic the Hedgehog. In the hack, several pieces of gore and blood could be found all over the place, as well as major pieces of disturbing content that shouldn't be allowed in a kid's game. ESRB were caught lacking on this one. The story was long and intense, but there was one major problem. It sucked. It was shit. It was so bad that the story was taken down from the original site and then moved into another site for creepypastas that sucked, and then that site got taken down as well. So the only way you could read the story was by going into another random site on the internet. I don't know, I just found that really funny. For a bit of context for all of you computer nerds out there, an exe file is a file that contains an executable program on Windows, with exe being short for executable file. It's probably the most recognizable file extension next to PNG and JPG and DOC and ITV and BBC. This file extension is only used with Windows, so if you're one of the 3 people who still play games on the Mac, you don't need to worry about being haunted by a plushie of Sonic the Hedgehog coming to kill you in the middle of the night after a long session of Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing.exe. Now back to the contemporary, try and say that 8 times. Sonic.exe was one of the first creepypastas that was directly adapted into a game. On August the 13th, 2012, Sonic.exe was released to the public on Game World by Mist Crimson, and the game was everything a man could dream of from a Sonic horror game. This game has already put George R.R. Martin's new game to shame in terms of literary adaptations. All other game developers don't even need to do anything. They could just pack up and go home. The Witcher? More like the Bitcher, because that's all their jealous fans could do at the unveiling of Sonic.exe at EEE. The game loads up with the typical Sonic the Hedgehog opening, but right before it cuts to black, it turns out it's a corrupted version. Oh no, this one's a bit creepy. I don't know, guys. The character selection screen shows up and you've got 3 characters with demonic sounds in the background. When a character is selected, Hang on, is that Kefka's laugh from Final Fantasy? In each of the levels, you load into a relatively normal world, except it isn't because the names are all weird threats directed towards the player. Then all of a sudden, the world starts acting weird. Now there's super realistic blood everywhere and characters getting hung on trees. This isn't very child-friendly. How's this gonna gauge sales? You continue through the level and all of a sudden, Sonic appears. But of course it isn't really Sonic, it's the evil one, the bad one with the red eyes. And he's bad, he's bad, he's really, really bad. You then spend the next few seconds trying to escape from Sonic, but unfortunately he's too fast and you're too slow. And then he shows up and ow, my ears. By the end of the game, it tries to make things seem like he's in the real world by greeting you with a silent jump scare saying that he's actually God. You load into the game over screen with artwork that was probably stolen from DeviantArt, and you can't shut the game off because all the key bindings are set to another piece of art that the developer probably didn't have permission to use. Despite the many shortcomings that the game had, it was a valiant effort in adapting a creepypasta that was already poorly written to begin with. It added a whole new layer of immersion to the whole creepypasta shtick. Now you could try putting yourself in the shoes of the protagonist of The Legend of Sonic.exe. The game had several updates over the years, with things like the fan art at the end being changed constantly, and the newest update to the game adding voice acting that really should not have been added. The game was low-key creepy with no voice acting, just dead silence and leaving you to read what was on the screen. But no! You know what? Let's add a deep demonic voice that would make it infinitely more scary. In later updates to the game, Easter eggs were also added that gave a bit more context to the universe of the game itself. A common practice in many .exe games is to code in a feature of the game where a character or the game itself knows your name to add even more immersion and make you think that the game is actually talking to you. Most of these .exe games used Game Maker Studio in order to scare people, hence the pixel nature of many of them, and, nerd speak incoming, it used a variable called the environment gets variable with your username to return the current username of the person playing the game. The feature in question is obsolete, as of course this could run a massive security risk for anyone choosing to play Thaf.exe or something at 9 minutes past midnight. This feature was carried over to a sequel for sonic.exe called sally.exe, where it's pretty much the same thing. Sonic kills all of the main characters and it ends on a really bad jump scare at the end of the game. Sonic was the most famous example of an EXE adaptation of an executable creepypasta, but Mario was also victim to this, with mario.exe making waves across the horror community. It was an adaptation of the I Hate You creepypasta, in which Mario encounters super real ray-traced blood around the Mushroom Kingdom, until he comes into contact with Luigi, who fights him until Mario accidentally sends him into lava and cries about it. On paper, that sounds like a really crappy fanfiction, but in the video game, it runs like a crappy fanfiction. A common trope in most of these EXE games was the act of bombarding you with random jumpscare images that have nothing to do with the game, except to make you go, whoa, coulda had a poo-poo woo-poo moment there. The .exe game phenomenon exploded throughout the 2010s, as people capitalized on yet another trend in the horror community. Fueled by YouTube and the wider internet in general, these EXE games all followed the same conventions laid out by sonic.exe, the founding father of the genre. We'll call them the X's, named after nothing in particular. Most EXE games tend to use the sprites of an already existing game, never really delving into original art much. The most original the art piece would get in any case is just black and red eyes. These sprites would come from the NES, the SNES, or the Mega Drive. As you play the game, static might fill the screen all of a sudden, being used as a jump scare or preceding a jump scare. The audio in the game tends to play in reverse. I guess this makes things scarier somehow if something is reversed and you switch it back to find out that the sentence actually makes sense. It was cool when the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy did it, but doesn't make things particularly scary. EXE games aren't the most innovative in the world, so most of the time, all the game consists of is the character walking down a never-ending road or map to the right until an event triggers. As well as this, many programmers don't even bother with programming in the character's main abilities to add extra immersion to the game, with main characters not even having the ability to jump, for example. In early updates of sonic.exe, Tails couldn't even fly. The most extreme examples of this have characters be unable to do anything but walk to the left and walk to the right, with no time or opportunity to explore anything. Top tier gameplay, lads! Well done! 10 out of 10! Game of the year! The final convention of most EXE games is the act of closing themselves, only to open again a few seconds later with either a message written in wingdings or a jump scare. Oh my god! Most of the time, it would be a jump scare image accompanied with loud static. and maybe a message saying to like the video or else you're going to have an uncomfortable sleep tonight. These games also had the ability to screw with your PC, maybe opening Chrome or Firefox or Netscape or Internet Explorer or something with a creepy image, maybe moving the mouse around. This started a game of EXE Minesweeper where people had no idea whether what they were playing was a game or was malware disguised as a game. As the 2010s continued, EXE games started to fall out of fashion. Many people who played horror games were looking for something new to play that wasn't just constant jump scare fests in 2D, so some devs took to creating jump scare fests, but in 3D. The most notable character for this is Jeffrey Woods. Jeff the Killer games were absolutely everywhere at one point. Most of them were poorly made horror games that simply had you walk forward until a still image of Jeff shows up in front of your face, accompanied by a loud sound which would cause you to have a poo-poo stinky moment in your pants. People can probably look back at the Jeff craze and scoffing FNAF fan games getting their own category on Game Jolt, but as a character, Jeff was perfect to adapt into a horror game. A teenage serial killer after you? That sounds like an interesting concept. It's just a shame that the source material is so weak that any attempt to make a game about him will probably be laughed at, and because of this, no one has tried to make one. Yet. There are several videos online of YouTubers playing Jeff the Killer games, and all of them, as you can expect, are poorly made, but there was some kind of odd charm to them, similar to the Slender games of old. Seeing Creepypasta games evolve into the realm of 3D showed that maybe something more could come from the genre. Games such as Illusion Ghost Killer and Jeff the Killer being absolutely trash, but still popular since it was chock full of jump scares. A young gamer's Adderall. And Kryptonite. Recently, we've had creepypasta stories and ARGs getting adaptations such as the Ayuwoki and Petscop, signaling a potential return in creepy independent games that don't constantly rely on tropes borrowed from the Five Nights at Freddy's and Silent Hill's playable teaser. Petscop being an already made game played by a stunt double for Psychic Pebbles, providing thrills on YouTube akin to the old Ben Drowned ARGs of old, and the Ayuwoki having the Jeff the Killer aesthetic to it. An already cursed origin story being adapted into a cursed game that you don't know is meant to be funny or not. Maybe we'll get another ARG or creepypasta adaptation that bucks the trend and brings back the whole notion of corrupted files on a PC, but this video simply was to serve as a trip down memory lane on what seems to be a lost art. Maybe people can get to creating full lost episodes of television programs, then adapting that into games. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I wanted to take some time to talk about a few things. First off, thank you all for an amazing year and an amazing decade in general. I've always wanted to make content like this, covering old nostalgic properties, horror properties, and everything in between, and I'm so happy you guys enjoyed the content that I make. Rest assured, I won't be quitting the channel anytime soon, and I can't thank you guys enough for the support you've been handing the channel over the years and from the beginning. You guys know who you are. Moving forward, I've got a whole pipeline of videos to cover across multiple genres, videos that have taken me ages to make, and collaborations with other YouTubers who you may know, so you can look forward to those. Also, merch. I know you guys have been asking me to do this for a while, and I can finally announce that I'm dropping merch. When? Later this month. More info will be revealed on Twitter, Instagram, and Discord, so here's yet another reminder to follow me there. This year, I'm also planning on ramping up my video output as well as my streaming output, so if you aren't already, follow me on Twitch. I stream video editing, horror games, random games, and some extra fun with viewers, so follow me there if you want. If you can't make it to a stream, don't worry one bit, because I upload highlights and funny moments from all of my streams edited by Richard onto my second channel. Link is also in the description with my Discord server, where I talk about video updates and I look at your fan art amongst other things. As well as that, my Patreon is always a thing you could pledge to, earning you access to project files, scripts, and early access to all of my videos, as well as producer credits. Absolutely everything is linked in the description, so read it all, I guess. Thanks to Priont, Dawn Fox, Hannah, Magusi, Scoop, Firm Elgar, Kilobytes, Red Dawn Boulder, Admiral Vape, Dakota Lewis, Bailey, Angie, and Dag for pledging to me with the Ascended tier on Patreon, and I'll see you all in another video.